Hello, everybody. This is Igor Cavalera, and you're listening to the Brutally Delicious podcast. Stay metal.
You over in England right now?
Cool. Yeah, in London. Yep.
Is that where you're pretty much based now?
Yeah, I've been here for about 8 years.
Wow. You like it a lot better?
Yeah, it's cool. I like it here.
Chris should be here in a minute, and then we'll just jump right in. You doing all right otherwise?
All good, man. Getting ready for some touring coming up.
What's it like trying to get ready for a tour after all these years, especially after having such a break?
I mean, it's fun, especially like trying to get some of the sounds and the songs that we wrote. It's cool. It's fun. Trying to remember some of the stuff as well.
Right. It's been a while. Hey, there's my partner, Chris. Igor.
Hello. Sorry for the delay.
All good.
I had to drop my wife off at work, the life of a rock star.
We were just talking about what it's like to finally get back on the road after all this time and playing those older tunes.
Oh, my God. Yeah, I just heard you say it. It must have been a trip having to go back and relearn songs. Like, how old were you when you wrote those songs?
I mean, that's the thing, like 19 on the Beneath the Remains. And then in my 20s when we did our Rise. So yeah, it's a long time ago.
So when you go back, are you not just learning the songs, but are you reinterpreting them as well in different ways, or are you just trying to stay as true to possible as how they were originally done?
Yeah, that's the thing, is I think if you try to stay as true as possible to it, naturally they are going to be different than when you play them 20 something years ago. So I guess the best approach it is to try to stay true, because otherwise it can become something completely different, because they're going to be different already. Just the techniques that you use nowadays that you didn't, and as a musician, how you evolve, they just going to be different. So yeah, so I think that's the in my opinion, the best way to do it. So this way there's a balance in between staying true, but also evolving in general.
Yeah. So like even the gear you're using, I assume is quite a bit better than what it was back then.
Yeah, I mean, for Beneath the Remains and Arise, I was already using a little bit of a better gear, than if we talk about anything behind those years and before those records. Then we're talking about like very, very primitive stuff.
Yeah.
Right.
And then it becomes a very different situation where there's a lot of improvisation and many other things. But by the time we hit Beneath the Remains, we were already playing with some gear that it was somehow a little more similar to what I play today.
Gotcha.
Awesome.
What was the impetus or the catalyst to do these two records live like that?
I mean, it's just something that me and Max, we get together and we have fun with it, and then of course our ideas, they also need to run together with our management, and then from that point on, that becomes a thing. It becomes a tour, becomes something that we can go out and play those songs,
Right.
But at first it's just pretty much me and Max being kids and wanted to, I don't know, revisit some of the stuff that we really enjoy,
And I imagine
So I actually want to share an experience, because I'm kind of I'm an older, like I came into metal as an old guy. Like I didn't discover metal until like 2011, really. I mean, I'd heard Roots and I'd heard stuff like that, but I hadn't really got into it. It wasn't really my thing. And then I went on this music festival called 70,000 Tons of Metal in 2011. And suddenly I realized there was this whole world that I never had seen before. And I saw the Return to Roots set on 70 70,000 tons of metal. What year was that? 2019?
Yeah,
I think it was 2019.
yeah.
And I got to tell you, dude, it was a fucking religious experience for me. I had never experienced metal that way. Like I'd saw a lot of really good metal shows, Gojira, Priest, you name it. Like I've seen a lot of great metal shows, but that in particular set right there was like, for me, never having really heard that record before, I had like I have goosebumps. You probably can't see them, but like my arms are, the hair on my arms is standing up just talking about how special that set was and how killer the drums were. Like I didn't ever think that drumming like that existed until like, I discovered metal in 2011 or whatever. You know what I mean? And then I hear it and it was just like this animalistic, primitive, I don't even know how, like, I mean those in the most positive ways. It was just, as you can see, I can't even put it into words.
Yeah.
So what's it like when you bring those out, and what was it like playing that set on 70,000 tons?
Well, that's the thing. That festival, you can call it a festival, but it because it is done in a completely different way, in a cruise.
Yeah.
That it's something that I never been in my whole life. I never been to a cruise, like that's something that, I don't know, it doesn't really attract me to go on a cruise.
Yeah.
But the idea of having a lot of bands playing in this cruise going, like for 3 days, it sounded really cool. So for me, it was an experience already just to go there and experience being on a cruise with a bunch of other bands that we enjoy, but also like fans and things like that. And then to play, Roots there, it was something that was very special because, like you said, there is people that saw Roots back in the days that were there. And of course, there was a lot of people that never got the chance to see that live set that we did back in the days. So yeah, it was very special, but also a little bizarre in a way that, like, especially playing on the upper deck of the cruise, it's really cool. It's something that, like for me, anytime I get to play outside of a venue, and especially in festivals and things like that, I find it super special because you are a bit more connected to, nature in a different way. And to think that we're in the middle of the ocean playing that set, it's even crazier,
Yeah.
Oh, it was like I literally had tears in my eyes, and I wasn't the only one. I was looking around and everyone was just like, what is happening right now? This is
And I was
insane.
not there.
I can't believe no, you weren't there because you're a loser. But it was I just had to bring that up because when Bruce said, "Oh, we were doing this interview," I was like, "Oh my god, I have to talk to him about this set," because, and I know that we're supposed to be talking about the other stuff that you're doing, but to me, it was just as a fan and as someone new to the band, I just didn't have any inkling about what to expect, and I kind of think that's going to happen on this new tour for you.
It's funny you say that because a lot of things that me and Max do since the beginning of the band, we look at it as a fan before anything else. And that's an approach that we always had with our thing, was like, of course, there is a business side to things, as the band gets more professional, but we always trust that big, gut feeling that we had as fans when we go do something, like even like the whole idea of playing old records again. It's something that it comes from a fan mentality more than a professional thing, because at first when me Max we start talking about this, my initial reaction always being like a bit selfish, and it's like, oh man, whoever saw that back in the days, they already saw it, and that's it, it's over. But then me thinking as a fan, it's like, no, that's not the right way to look at it, because there is bands that I would love to see today that I didn't have a chance to see when they released their records, when they were doing those tours. So I think it's a balance between those two. And then we get to where we are, like doing the Roots and now doing Beneath and Arise. It's something that at the end of the day, we have a lot of fun playing those songs. That's the final point. Is like, I love hitting the stage and having to play, a lot of those beats, a lot of the stuff that I create when I was like a lot younger, and having to revisit this. It's a bit of a, I don't know, like it has this side of me that it brings me back to that time, which is very special. I always been very proud of everything that we did.
Right.
Does it almost make you feel young again? Not that you're old, but like, does it make you feel young again when you play those songs? Like, do you kind of forget where you are and you're back in that place that you were so many years ago?
It does have a bit of that feeling, because when you are connected playing those songs, you lose a bit track of time and space. And that's something that I hear some musicians, talking about that, but it's very true. Like, if you're that connected to the music, you're not really thinking where you are, but you kind of like time travel in a way to those days. And even before, it had that feeling that when we started as musicians, playing in a garage, it brings that whole energy back.
Do you ever find yourself when you're playing the older stuff like that, like you're playing and suddenly your mind, like, how an artist has the ability to block out their sight and just look inside their mind? Maybe that's the wrong way to put it, but do you ever find yourself playing and suddenly you're at like a festival somewhere else in the world, and then suddenly you're like, oh my God, I'm back in the club now. Oh shit, I got to get back on track.
Well, there is I wouldn't say that literal, like, of going into a place, like a festival back in the days, or a concert, but there is a spot that you hit when you are that connected again with the energy, with this flow of things, where you do lose a bit of an idea of what's going on at that moment.
Right.
You lose yourself.
That's so cool.
And that's something that I find quite special. And I think it's something that not only with music, but I think with art in general, we can do those things, where we can connect that much. It can be by reading something that you lose time, like track of timing and things like that, watching a movie, listening to something, and playing the instrument also does that effect.
Amazing. Sorry, Bruce, I'm stepping all over you.
No, that's fine. What I was going to ask is, and we asked this quite a bit of bands that are, a little bit older, your fans are going to be, or your audience is going to be multi-generational at this point, right? You're going to have people like my age bringing their kids to see these original shows. What's that going to be like?
But it's something that we don't really think about it, as far as like how you measure who's coming to the show, because I believe it's a very free kind of idea of who comes to see what we do. And sometimes it can be, as we know, metal, it's something that sometimes it can be more fashionable, and there's times that everyone hates metal, and there's times where a lot of people are more into it, and we just travel through that. So we don't really know if our audience, it's going to be mostly of older people, or if it's going to be a younger wave of a generation coming in. So although those things are very difficult to dictate, but at the same time, I find quite special that there is all this young people paying attention to something that we did many years ago and still relevant. And that's just very special,
And that's something that you could have never imagined, right? I mean, being a kid from Brazil, all of a sudden, how many ever years later, these records are still relevant, that people are bringing their kids and grandkids. You couldn't have imagined that ever, right?
No, and that's something that if you think about it when you are doing things, you're probably going to mess that up. again, and then you're putting yourself in this business focus. That's not the point. Like all those things should be something that is very natural, very organic. And then now we can look at this in a different way. But at the time when you're writing the stuff, when you're doing the stuff, you're not really thinking that far ahead. You're thinking, you're living the moment, and you're hoping for things to happen to those records, to those tours.
Right.
I think there's a big misconception about metal, that it's not art. And talking to you, I get the idea that you're heavily connected to the art of music, or even just in general life and creation. How do you kind of stay grounded while working through older material and newer material? How do you stay grounded and connected to the art that you're making?
Again, I think it's about balancing those things. Of course, I love researching with new things, new ideas, but I also give a lot of respect to the things that I did, and I always go back and pull some of those things to the new ideas. So it's a mixture of both. And I think that's the way that, in my view, that you can keep things like fresh. It's not forgetting about the past and just moving forward. It is moving forward, but always going back and picking some things that can help you, especially with such a strong base that you create, with whatever you did through all these years. You can't just throw all of that away. So I think it's a combination of both. And that's how I think a lot of musicians stay relevant, is by doing this. It's by not only living off the past, but also doing a mixing of what is now, how important it is to be now here.
Right.
Because also, like, a lot of people can just sit down and be like, oh, things were good back then, nothing's good now. And I think that's just being lazy. I think nowadays there is a lot of good stuff going on. There's a lot of amazing upcoming artists on all styles, like doing a lot of really cool stuff. So I think most people who are too connected just to the past, I think they're just not searching enough, not researching, and not seeing what's in their face.
Yeah.
I have a question that's not related to the tour, but it's kind of related to you guys. You guys were the first band to really bring indigenous people to the forefront and use instrumentation like this. And it was groundbreaking. Like, I mean, it changed the world of metal overnight. I mean, it really did. But I was just watching Rock in Rio, the one that just passed, and with Gojira's Amazonia, and how they brought out indigenous people out as well. And how are you guys connected in any way? Have they reached out to you for advice in any way? Or how do you kind of look at what they're doing with that record?
You mean Gojira?
Yeah.
I mean, we know the guys. We are friends with them, but it's just, I can just see a huge influence on things that we did, and I look at that again as a very groundbreaking thing, because at the time I don't even remember like this whole thing with like metal bands going back to their roots, even like Norwegian bands doing like Viking stuff. That wasn't a thing back then.
Right.
That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, later that became like, oh shit, we can look into our past and bring some of that stuff that it totally makes sense to the music that we do today. And that's something that we did. And I find myself sometimes very, very proud of that, because I think that's one of the legacies, I think, of Roots. Some people look at Roots as our biggest selling record, which it's fine, but I like to look at Roots in a more on the other way around, where we were trying things that at the time they were very risky.
Yeah.
They were not the typical thing that every metal band was doing. We were pushing the limits of things that could go completely wrong. So it was a risk, at the time. We didn't know how it would work out, by doing, doing the thing with the Chavantes tribe, recording with them, and bringing all those elements, it could go completely wrong. We didn't know at the time.
Right.
It was just we had this gut feeling that it was the correct thing to do. And to see a band like Gojira doing this nowadays, it totally relates to what we did, the work that we did, 30 years ago.
Yeah,
I think they'd be the first to admit it, honestly.
Yeah, and we're 100%, very, very proud of it. Like, because I think not only Gojira, but I see this whole. There's a lot of more of the metal, even there's a lot of like people going back to ideas, and there's a lot of like black metal bands nowadays that they do a lot of things with their roots, especially with the American Indian roots. There's a lot of like, and those things back then, they were not common. They were not. So I feel very proud of it. That we kind of launched this idea, and nowadays it became a thing.
Yeah, but every record that you've done is a build up, right? Like I think your band has always been kind of a risk-taking type of band, really.
Yeah.
Artistically.
Yeah, and luckily at the time we had a label that backed up a lot of those ideas. And that's also another thing that is important to point, that as a band, sometimes you need to be strong enough with your ideas that you're not gonna give up them just because somebody might say that might not be the correct business way of looking at it. So we had to step our feet and be like, look, this is how it's gonna be. And then luckily we didn't get the plug pulled out of us.
Thank God, or where would we be?
So you guys,
Yeah.
Please correct me. You were on Roadrunner,
Yeah.
correct? So how does a band from Brazil end up signing to Roadrunner? This is a question that I've always wanted to know, and now I can ask you.
Wow, that's also the thing. Like, the band started in 1984 in Brazil, so we were doing a lot of underground work for many years before we got on Roadrunners like radar. So it wasn't like we just started and then we got picked up by a big label at the time. It's something that we've been releasing records through like a very underground scene in Brazil. And then, of course, at the time, like tape trading and a lot of fanzines start to, create this buzz around the band. And then it took years and years until Roadrunner showed some interest on releasing one of our records, which was Beneath the Remains. So there is a trajectory to that, which a lot of people sometimes don't even know we have those albums before Beneath the Remains, stuff like Morbid Vision, Schizophrenia, and Bestial Devastation. Those are like super underground, like Brazilian stuff that we put out. And that's how we built our way all the way to the Roadrunner thing.
Beautiful.
It really is amazing how tape trading and fanzines and all that stuff really catapulted metal to the forefront of the music scene back then.
Well, globally.
Because the fans wanted it. The fans wanted it regardless of what the industry was trying to push on people. The fans were like, no, we want this. Give it to us.
Yeah, and I think today is not different. There is this whole thing with a lot of independent acts putting out their music through like Bandcamp or other channels where they don't even have a label behind it, and they're putting their stuff out there, and somehow it gets to the target that they want, which is like their crowd. So I think there's always a way of pushing your music to the right channels,
Yeah. Here's a question that I would like to ask. When did you realize that business was a major part of what you were doing?
It was not even us. It was the minute we had a management behind us, and that was also very important to have that, once you have a manager, then they can do all the fighting for you, with the label, with booking agents, with festivals.
And then
And
it's
that's
real.
when you realize you need to form a team. Yeah, you need to have a strong team with you. And yeah, and that's like any other band. That's so important to have those people behind you.
Yeah. So it wasn't like you guys weren't like hardcore business right off the start. It was kind of like you were making records and playing shows, and then a management took interest, and then suddenly they laid out something in front of you, and you're like, oh my God,
Mm.
we have to do this like this.
Yeah,
Is that the
no,
way?
no, I think it was a lot more like we knew, we always been very focused, like we're saying, to the point of me and Max sending tapes all over the world, like exchanging. Those things were already us connecting like to a network of fans.
Yeah.
And then of course later things get a lot more serious when you have a big label involved. So yeah, there is a side of it that I think it's really important also for bands who are starting, which you gotta be focused. You gotta put all your effort into it. Because otherwise it doesn't happen.
I started out kind of like just playing shows, and then suddenly I realized, oh God, no, it's got to be all business all the time. Go. And it was just nonstop, 24 hours a day, trying to find some pathway,
Right.
And you meet a lot of younger musicians. So I'm glad that you pointed this out. You meet a lot of young musicians that think that someone's just going to drop in, and then that's when things get serious.
Yeah, I think that there is a combination of both. Like I said, the focus is very important. You have to work really hard as part of this. Otherwise, again, it doesn't happen. But at the same time, there's the other side of it, which is the focus. It cannot not only be the success.
Right.
At the end of the day, we were not looking at numbers. We were not looking we were looking at writing some amazing music that we love. So that was like the focus. Like even when we wrote later, like the albums, our idea wasn't like, oh yeah, we're gonna write this album because it's gonna sell a lot. That wasn't the final focus of us. It was always like, man, we're gonna write the best songs that we could write now that we love. And if that becomes something that sells, then it's amazing. And it becomes a lot more easier for you to accept the other side as well. If it goes completely a failure, if you did something that you love, it's a lot easier to accept that.
I think fans
I'd say
connect
goal
with that,
achieved.
though. Yeah, but I think, oh yeah, goal achieved. But I think fans connect with that, right? They connect with the organic nature of things and know that it's not fabricated to sell a record or to sell out a tour. You're writing the music from your heart, from the jungles, from wherever, and people connected with it.
Yeah, and I think that's something that fans can smell that a mile away.
Right.
They know when it's something's fake. The same way they know when it's real, and they can relate to whatever, like musically, lyrically, even the visual identity, all those things. They can see if it's real. There's no gimmicks.
Yep. Well, I appreciate it. We're running out of time here, I think. So I appreciate your contribution to metal. Thank you, sir. Big fan. Glad to have you.
Yeah, thank you for the conversation. I think it was very interesting because that's something that it's always important to talk to people that understand also the other side. So I think the questions were great.
Good. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. I just wanted, we don't have to keep this in. I just wanted to say thanks for that show on 70,000 Tons of Metal, dude. It was like, I came home and as soon as I got off the plane, I jumped in the car, Roots, go on 10. And it's it's in the playlist all the time.
Oh, yeah. Because it's such a special event. I have to say, I was buzzed because I watched Napalm Death, then on Death, and I watched like Dark Funeral, this band that I really like. They were also playing the same spot, like in the top, like
By the pool, yeah.
balcony kind of thing. It was so cool. So yeah, hopefully we'll do that again.
Yeah, I mean, fingers crossed. And we didn't ask this, but we need to ask this. We already know, but the people that listening probably don't. When does the tour start, and where are you headed to?
Okay, so the tours that would start in. I fly to the US on the 26th to do some rehearsals with Max and the rest of the band, and then we start, I believe, in California, and it goes all the way. So there's a lot of dates. I don't have them in front of me right now.
Okay, but it starts early October.
Yes.
Okay,
So it's going to be very. We're very excited. You know, we're planning to add some things that we didn't do on the last tour. So there is going to be some extra stuff added to the menu.
Oh God, I hope you guys come to the DC area. Please come to the DC area. I got to look at the dates.
I'm pretty sure I saw a Maryland date, Chris.
It's then are you playing the Fillmore Silver Spring? Okay, so. I got to look.
Yeah, okay. I'll look in the dates, but yeah, hopefully it will be there.
So awesome, dude. Thank you so much. All right.
I appreciate you taking the time. Thank you for your contribution to metal, and hopefully we'll catch you soon.
All right. See you guys later.
See you. Well. Bye-bye.
Cheers.